So what the newspaper writes about a few people who were outright arrested.
Yeah.
But they also said that they only arrested people who brawled. So if they saw
They were causing a scene.
Yeah,
huh?
if they saw you sneaking a drink, they'd probably give you a tisk and tell you to do that in secret next time. But if you were causing trouble, you would get arrested. And
Yeah.
that was a compromise, I guess. But the other thing the newspaper writes about is these young people,
Mhm.
these young people at these parties who kept going back and forth from the house to their car.
Uh-huh.
And the article takes extra care to notice that many of them were not wearing jackets.
Oh, yeah. They had to add a layer of protection.
And it said, what reason would you have to be walking around outside without a jacket if you were not going to sneak a drink from the car?
You heard that there. That is local historian and author Aaron Helman talking about a quote-unquote dry New Year's Eve in South Bend 100 years ago. More of that later, but first, thank you for listening to another episode of Round the Bend Now and Then. My name is Matt Emery, and I'm a local history nerd. My main mission in this podcast, as well as other Round the Bend material, is to create engaging content that shares how intertwined the South Bend and Mishawaka area's past is to our present. In the podcast, I interview local leaders, business owners, and community members to help tell their stories, because their stories help tell the story of South Bend and Mishawaka. In this episode, I meet with local historian and author Aaron Helman, and we talk about South Bend 100 years ago. Since it's the new year, January's edition of Aaron's website, the South Bend News-Times, features 6 different stories, each one pulling us back into South Bend 100 years ago to 1926. We thought it'd be a perfect opportunity to bring these stories into an episode of Round the Bend Now and Then and explore them together. As you'll hear in this episode, these stories give us a real glimpse into everyday life in our area a century ago. On the surface, they're all very different. Industry, music, sports, public health. But underneath, they're surprisingly connected. I really can't recommend Aaron's work enough. He does a great job of digging deep into local history and sharing it in a way that's informative, engaging, and darn funny. Check out the articles that we discussed and many more at southbendnewstimes.com. You can learn a ton about our local history from Aaron's books. Check them out at aaronhelman.com. Aaron also hosts and narrates a local history podcast called A Bend in Time, available wherever you get your podcasts. Or check out the show notes for a link to that and also his 2 websites. Thank you again, Aaron, for joining us. And more importantly, thank you for all that you do to help keep our local history alive. Before we get started, I want to thank the Portage Township Trustee's Office for everything they do for our community and for also supporting our work as a sponsor of this episode. And now, sit back and enjoy learning about South Bend 1926 with Aaron Helman. Well, hey, Aaron, thank you again for joining us.
It's a pleasure to be back, Matt. Thanks for having me.
Definitely. You're a reoccurring guest.
Good.
In your January edition of the South Bend News-Times, you wrote several articles from 100 years ago in 1926. And we decided to meet to do a podcast about those articles. And in reading them, it just gives you a sense of what it was like 100 years ago.
Yeah, absolutely. There's definitely parts of it that are feel current still.
Yeah.
And then there's definitely parts that you're like, that was way more than 100 years ago, right? But
Yeah.
no, it's not as far as we thought.
And it's crazy. It is. And that's a good point. Like some similarities till today and some that are just none at all. But before we dive into that, just talk to our listeners about some of your projects, books, your website, and all that good stuff.
Yeah, so I'm Aaron Helman. I write local history books and some regional history books. My newest book is a history of Michigan, but I've got 2 about the Michiana area. And I also run the website, the South Bend News-Times, which is where I collect all of my fun stories that don't fit into a book.
Yeah.
And we need people to do that. We need people to do what you're doing, Matt, and just tell stories, because if we don't tell them, they get lost.
And you're exactly right. It's like we're, even with all of the avenues of the internet and stuff, if we're not telling them, even with all of that, it's gone.
Yep, absolutely.
You know, and just in reading your articles about the 100 years ago, I mean, like, imagine if those articles were never captured in time, you know? And listeners, check out Aaron's stuff. It's good. His website, the South Bend News Times, really just engaging, humorous, but full of information, articles, his books, neat little stories from our history, and definitely check it out. I'll have links in the show notes. Before we jump into these individual articles, what drew you to these specific stories? Did you seek out to find articles from 100 years ago, or did it just kind of happen?
Yeah, so I'm a local history nerd. I'm sure you can relate. And so one thing that I do sometimes is if I'm bored, if I got time to kill, I'll pull up a newspaper from 50 years ago today, 75 years ago today, 100 years today. And so I was just kind of looking at 100 years ago in 1926. And I found some stuff that was really interesting, really fascinating, besides the fact that 100 is a nice round number.
Of course.
But it was a really big time in South Bend, in the nation as a whole. We're talking, and we'll get into all this, but we're talking about an automotive revolution that is not yet completed and hasn't quite determined where it's going to go or how it's going to stop.
Yeah.
We're in the middle of Prohibition. This is a huge time. We're in the middle of the Roaring 20s, ahead of the Great Depression. So everything is happening all at the same time in South Bend in 1926, and that's a great jumping off point to tell local stories, but also stories that are local, but also tell the story of the nation as a whole at that time.
Absolutely. So while it happened locally, there could have been similarities across the country.
There absolutely were.
In the same manner. And one of the first articles you wrote, and you mentioned something to do with, connected to today, the first article is titled 100 Years Ago, Tariffs Killed South Bend's Wool Industry. And when we think of South Bend and industry, we often think, like Studebaker, Oliver. Man, can you paint a picture of what the wool industry was like here?
This was a big area for the wool industry, and not just in South Bend. The Beager, which later became Uniroyal, they started as a woolen manufacturer.
Oh, okay.
So that was all wool out there. And then in South Bend, we had two major players, the South Bend Woolen Mills, which is the one that went out of business in 26, and the Stevenson Underwear Mills, which is now an apartment complex. You could still go see the historical marker, walk through that building if you wanted to. And so wool was a pretty big industry here. It had to be processed somewhere. And wool was processed in the early years by water power.
Okay.
Which meant so you were on the race. And that was what powered your woolen mills. And so that's what grew that industry here. Obviously, by 26, they're no longer running on water power, but they've got long business roots in town. They've got families who've supported them. And so that was a significant industry in South Bend coming into the 1920s.
You wrote, the year was 1926, and the 20s were roaring as loudly as they ever had. But during America's rise to preeminence, there were hints that things may not last this way forever. In South Bend, at least at a few factories, there was even some ominous writing on the wall. It's just that everyone was too busy watching the soaring stock markets to notice it. What did they not notice about the wool industry?
Well, it was going out of business.
Why?
And so in January, the newspaper, and it's thick column inches about a lot of really important things. And then buried in there, but still on the first page was the South Bend Woolen Mills was entering into insolvency.
Okay.
So it was a first step to bankruptcy. They were about to go out of business.
Man.
And so later on, when the Great Depression really hits and people are like, everything was so good, you're like, there were these things that weren't so good. And they weren't that hard to find. You just weren't paying too much attention.
Yeah, that makes sense. You'd explain that decisions made hundreds of miles away ended up having very real consequences in South Bend. Man, how did those national choices affect people here?
Yeah, it was decisions made hundreds of miles away, and in some cases decades ago.
Okay.
And so it's a tariff story, and this is exciting to me and no one else because I have an econ degree, and when I was in college, I studied tariffs. I studied the effects of tariffs, and so I fall into this local history story, and I'm like, I might be the only person that's interested in this, but I'll tell you and the listeners anyway because it ends up being fascinating. So what happened was in the early years, in the 1800s, they had real high tariffs.
Okay.
And those high tariffs protected the wool industry. because you couldn't import cheap wool.
Got it.
Then by the late 1800s, early 1900s, they lowered the tariffs on wool. Mm-hmm. And so all of this foreign wool comes over to the United States.
Okay.
And all of a sudden, it is no longer profitable to be a sheep herder in America because you can't compete. Mm-hmm. And so all of these sheep herders start slaughtering their flocks.
Yeah.
I mean, we're talking mass sheep slaughter.
When I was reading that, I was, ooh.
Yeah. There was a period of about a year when lamb chops were cheaper than pork chops.
Yeah, you had wrote that. That's crazy.
There's just such an influx of lamb meat, okay? And so that happens. Uh-huh. Well, later on, they decide that they want to raise the tariffs up again.
Got it.
To protect American industry. This is after World War I. Mm-hmm. There's this retreat inside. We want to be protect America again. So the tariffs go up, and all of a sudden, all that cheap wool that was coming in becomes more expensive. Mm-hmm. And the political people are like, well, now you'll have to buy your wool from American farmers. Mm-hmm. And everyone in the industry said, we can't.
Yeah.
All of those sheep have been slaughtered.
Oh my gosh.
And there were these estimates that it would take 30 to 40 years of deliberate breeding.
That is wild.
To get the numbers back up.
Uh-huh.
And so the tariff question here is, there's pros and cons to all tariff policy, but it's the short-sightedness of someone just saying, buy American without realizing you can't buy American on this right now or for a very long time. Uh-huh. It's not different than if we tariffed bananas heavily.
Yeah, we don't have bananas.
You can't buy American bananas. Well, at this time, you could not buy American sheep. Uh-huh. And so the price of wool goes through the roof. Yep. People start looking at alternatives. And the woolen manufacturers, which have been bringing in foreign wool for decades, suddenly they're completely priced out. They can't get it anymore. They can't get it at prices that are good. They can't sell their goods at prices that are good. Mm-hmm. And the wool industry starts to tank. Yep. In Mishawaka, the Beaver company had already started to shift to being a rubber company. Uh-huh. And so they're going to be fine. But the two woolen manufacturers in South Bend aren't. South Bend Woolen goes out in 26. Uh-huh. Stevenson Underwear Mills goes out a few years later. And the woolen manufacturing industry completely dissolves.
Just gone. That's just nuts. When we go back and we read newspapers, we kind of get a good sense of the times. We get a good sense of what people are thinking at the time. At that time, do you think folks had a good sense of why the decline was happening, or?
They absolutely did not.
Okay.
And tariffs, this is a historic problem with tariffs. People don't understand them. Uh-huh. A tariff is a tax.
Got you.
It is a tax that doesn't sound like a tax. Yep. So politicians since the founding of the United States have said no more new taxes, we're going to do tariffs instead.
But that's what it is a tax.
It's a tax. And so if you don't mind me making a pun here, I would say they had the wool pulled over their eyes.
I love it.
There just wasn't any wool left. And so they didn't realize on a large scale level what was driving this.
Right.
It just happened. Yep. And factories went out of business in different places for different reasons all the time.
Right.
So it was easy to just say, oh, this is a
another
factory.
One.
This happens sometimes. But there were real reasons behind it.
Right.
And it did leave hundreds of people out of work.
Uh-huh. Yeah. And then within the next 3 or 4 years, Great Depression.
Absolutely. And so that's 2 more factories that would have been putting out some sort of goods.
True.
That aren't there anymore.
True. Anything else on the wool story?
Any story that involves tariffs and sheep slaughter is a story that should be repeated. I hope I'm not the only one who enjoys the irony there.
Well, you may be. Who knows? No, that's funny. George Shively, South Bend's forgotten novelist.
Love George Shively.
Dude, that was neat. But the beginning of the article, I mean, you had me hooked, all right? Just like you... Can you describe how you stumbled upon George Shively?
Yeah, absolutely. I was doing the nerdiest thing possible, which was reading like the later pages in a newspaper from 100 years ago.
Hey.
Just to see what I would find.
Right.
And I found a book review of George Shively's second novel.
Okay.
Called Sabbatical Year. And it was like, he's a South Bend kid and we said we liked his first novel because he was from South Bend, but this one's actually good.
Okay.
I'm paraphrasing.
Yeah.
But it was like the most backhanded compliment you've ever seen. They're like, yeah, we said his first book was good. It was not. But this book is actually good, and he's in New York, and it's published, and you should get it. And I had never heard this guy in my life.
Right. South Bend author.
Yeah.
And you saw it in the newspaper.
So I did some Googles, and I found this George Shively. He was a kid from South Bend. His dad was a senator, Senator Benjamin Shively, and we have a road south of South Bend. Shively Road is named after his dad. And I hadn't known that before. And then George is one of 3 kids. He went off to New York to try to become a novelist after serving in World War I and lived out this literary life. He published 2 novels and became an editor for the rest of his life and edited some fairly important novelists down the road. And he died in New York, never really came back to South Bend on anything like a permanent basis. But it's a South Bend kid. Went to South Bend Central High School. Played baseball. There's a great photo of him on the South Bend Central baseball team in like 1909 or something. He's got amazing hair. And he lived this whole incredible life. And so I knew I had to read these books.
Yeah.
And that was going to prove to be a challenge. Because
talk to me about inception or initiation.
Yeah, so
tell us what steps you had to take to read that puppy.
His first book, Initiation, which came out in 1925, is at the downtown library. It is at it. I did not say it was available.
Right.
It is at the library. It's in the local history section. It has one of those reference-only books.
Yeah.
You can't check it out. You can't take it home. I asked. They said, no, I get it.
Yeah.
And this book doesn't exist anywhere else that I could find it other than
quite literally
there.
might be the only copy that we are aware of.
Yeah. So I had to go over there on my lunch break and read 40, 50 pages a day. It's a slow read, too. This is not the Hunger Games. This is very literary, heavy stuff.
Yeah.
They talk
in a different manner.
In a different manner, yeah. It's old-timey talk, so it's slow to get through. But I read the entire book over the course of about 2 weeks worth of lunch breaks. And I loved this book.
Wow.
This book is set, Initiation is set in 1910's South Bend. And it's not autobiographical of the author's life, but parts of it definitely are. So the main character lives where he lived.
Marion in Michigan, right? Or Madison in Michigan area, right there by the hospital.
He sees the couples walking down through Leaper Park back in the day. And so just for that alone, everyone should at least read the first third of this book, which is the part that's set in South Bend, to get a picture of what South Bend was like circa 1909.
That was the neat part when you were writing about the initiation. Was it's kind of like his life-ish, and it really just gets a good exemplifies kind of South Bend at that time.
Absolutely, it's beautiful.
That is so neat. Did the library worker in the local history room, did they joke with you at all, like seeing you every single day? Did they tease you at all coming in there? Or
so at one point, they ask you to leave the books out instead of reshelving them.
Yeah,
because they want to mark how often these books are getting picked up and getting used. And so I asked them, I was like, when is the last time this book's picked up? And they couldn't find it. But at one point, they were like, you just leave a bookmark in it.
Yeah.
Because no one else is picking up this book. No one else is reading this book. No one's heard of this guy.
You got to imagine their little lounge talk. There's this guy who's coming in every day and he's reading this old book.
I have been that guy in that room for a long time. They're used to me.
I know they are, with your microfilm and all that good stuff too. We don't have to spend too much on his second book, Sabbatical Year, but what's your Amazon review of that?
My Amazon review of that is 4 stars, although I'm not sure I would recommend it for the price. I had to buy that one from a rare book dealer. It sent me back $100 for this book. The crazy thing is it had never been read before. It had never been opened.
Wow, that's what you had wrote. That is
I could
insane.
Tell because some of the pages hadn't been cut. So you couldn't read some of these pages. So it's crazy to hold this thing that's 100 years old. No one's ever touched it, and still it's brand new. Yeah.
And you have a picture of it in your article too. I think that's really cool too.
Yeah.
We'll take a break here to thank one of our sponsors, the Portage Township Trustee Office. If you're not familiar with the work of the trustee's office, This is one of those local government offices that quietly but critically supports our community every single day. From emergency assistance and housing support to food programs and help for neighbors who are facing tough times, the Portage Township Trustee Office exists to make sure people don't fall through the cracks. Trustee Jason Critchlow and his team are consistently fighting for the needs of Portage Township residents. And it's not just talk, folks. Jason does a great job of helping us understand what's happening right now, what current events are actually affecting us locally, and what we can do about them. He's transparent, communicative, and deeply invested in educating the community he serves. What I especially appreciate about Jason is that he doesn't just stay local. He frequently travels to the State House to advocate directly for Portage Township residents, making sure our voices are heard at the state level. So if you or someone you know needs assistance, or if you simply want to better understand the resources available in our community, I encourage you to check out portagetownship.com or follow the Portage Township Trustee Office on Facebook. There's a ton of helpful and timely information there. A huge thanks to Jason and his entire team for the work that they do and for supporting Round the Bend now and then. Local stories and local services like this are what help keep our community strong. Side note, I wrote that whole thing prior to reaching out to Jason and his team for input, because that's how much I know they do. Literally, I sat down, wrote a list of the things that they do for our community, and then put it into a narrative. Once again, thank you. And now, back to the episode. All right, we'll move on to, did Babe Ruth really hit a home run in South Bend? Now, you'd already wrote about this in 2024, but you just wanted to revisit it for the 100-year perspective. I'm going to read a little quote that you wrote. My eyes were blurry and fuzzy, courtesy of a 4-hour binge session in the microfilm room, a byproduct of a bizarre obsession I developed for a Babe Ruth home run that never even made it into the record books. But then you even looked through an old Polish newspaper too, right?
Absolutely.
And that was just the beginning? Can you talk to us about this bizarre obsession and how you obtained it?
Well, so the obsession comes about because I had read this story about Babe Ruth hitting a home run in South Bend in 1926. So that happened,
right?
And I thought that story was
it's awesome.
Was awesome and cool and fun. But the obsession comes because after he hit the home run, he gave the bat to a kid in the stands.
Yep.
And I have been trying to find that bat virtually every day of my life ever since. The kid he gave it to was named Tommy Hoban.
Yep.
And little Tommy Hoban still has grandchildren, great-grandchildren in town. I've talked with most of them, sometimes by knocking unannounced on their door.
To look for the bat?
Yeah. So some of them have never heard of it. Some of them had heard the story but didn't know where the bat was.
Yeah.
I met a guy who thinks he has the bat. I think he probably has the bat.
Okay.
But I can't prove it.
Yeah.
And so it's a really difficult thing to research in newspapers because if you're on newspapers.com and you're searching, the search term that you're going to use is Babe Ruth.
Yeah.
Which is only going to return 8 billion results from newspapers across the 1920s.
And they put the box scores in the newspapers then too. So literally just his stats, like he went 1 for 3.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. I mean, his name might appear in newspapers in the 1920s more than any other name.
I bet you're right.
And so it is an eye-blurring experience because you're just combing through these, trying to find old pictures, trying to find clues.
Yep.
But the home run really happened. It happened at Playland Park.
Yep.
And I went down and kind of figured out where home plate would have been. And they measured off the distance. They said that the ball cleared the fence, rolled down a hill and across a gravel lane before it came to a stop 605 feet.
That's insane.
Left center or right center field. So I measured it off and figured out, you know, where this home run probably landed.
Love it.
We also know a kid ran off with the ball, but we don't know who that kid was, and we're never going to know that we found
way
that ball.
gone.
But Babe Ruth famously used the heaviest bat in Major League Baseball at that time. So if you do find a Babe Ruth bat, you know it's a Babe Ruth bat. You're not going to confuse it with someone else's bat.
It's a big piece of lumber, big log.
It is absolutely the kind of thing that somewhere out there is the bat.
Yeah.
I believe that I have found the guy who has the bat. What I need now is the absolute proof.
Yeah.
I think that's out there somewhere too. But it cannot any longer be my life's mission.
You have to always just let it go.
My wife wants me to come home sometimes.
I even was trying to help you out. I was looking at newspapers.com and Tommy Hoban, and I couldn't find much. I was hoping just a sliver, maybe like an article about him when he was 70 or something.
Yep.
That hey, when I was a kid, I could find nothing. It just nothing.
Matt, I was at the Vine.
Yeah.
The Vine. I was having a drink at the bar, and this guy walks up, and he's about 2 seats down from me, and he must have been a regular.
Yeah.
Because the bartender says to him, "Mr. Hoban, how are you doing today?" And I put my drink down, and I was like, "Yes, Mr. Hoban, how are you doing today? We're going to talk about this now."
Did you introduce yourself?
Absolutely.
Was he
Eventually, I introduced myself.
Was he related?
He was one of the grandkids.
That's wild. That's nuts.
And so he pointed me in one direction that fizzled out, and then another direction that also fizzled out. But yeah, man, I'm all over this.
Well, hey, if there's one of our listeners out there who might know where Babe Ruth's bat is from 1926 at Playland Park, you need to let us know.
Yes, I would be able to finally sleep peacefully again.
And folks, read the article. It's neat. It's just. When I first started reading it, I was thinking, and I think you'd mentioned something too, it was like Babe Ruth All-Stars coming around, and I'm thinking something similar to the Washington Generals and the Harlem Globetrotters, but the teams that they were playing had some studs on there. What, Freddie Fitzsimmons, who was an All-Star here in Mishawaka?
Yeah, absolutely.
So it was competitive.
It was a very competitive game, and the Babe Ruth All-Stars, they were not a great team. Okay. They were his buddies that he was trying to get money to, but they had Babe Ruth at his best.
Of course.
That counts for something.
Of course. Right. All right. The next article is smallpox in South Bend, the epidemic in 1926. And you had opened the article just noting that things seemed awesome, just like the Roaring 20s. Industry going well, more leisure, there's more entertainment. But South Bend was dealing with the smallpox outbreak. And we don't even really associate smallpox with the Roaring 20s, but it was pretty serious, wasn't it?
It was pretty serious, and it's one of those stories that when you see it, it feels like it's way more than 100 years ago.
Yeah,
but the poor health officer gets inaugurated or put into office
that day, right?
On January 1st, in the afternoon, like 3:00 in the afternoon is the ceremony for all the officials, and by the next day, there is a full-blown smallpox outbreak.
That is insane.
That had been passed around, basically holiday get-togethers.
Yeah.
These are a really good way to pass around smallpox. And so this guy's been on the job less than 24 hours, and he's got a full-blown smallpox epidemic on his hands.
That's crazy. John B. Bertling was the health officer, 24 hours. How did everyday residents respond? I mean, was there panic, resistance, anything like that?
There was panic. There was less resistance than you would think. The health officer basically said, there's a smallpox vaccine. If you haven't gotten your vaccine, come down and get your vaccine. They vaccinated thousands of people in weeks.
Like that.
And by the end of the month, by the end of January, they declared the smallpox epidemic over.
1 month.
Over and done. But in the midst of that time, they were doing some of the same things that we had to do during COVID times.
Yes.
They were closing schools.
Yep.
They canceled the big spelling bee. That was like the big event of January. They were like, it's too many people. It's too many people in a small space. We're going to cancel it, postpone it until this is over.
Yep.
And so, I think about like the COVID pandemic, and we talk about it being an unprecedented time.
Right.
In a lot of ways it was, but in a lot of ways it wasn't.
Yep.
I mean, this was a playbook
that
had existed in 1926.
Yeah.
They got through it, I think, with only one death, but it was a scary death. It was a young woman in her 20s who was healthy and started to be symptomatic and was dead within a day and a half.
That is awful, man. That's awful. And like you said, they inoculated 8,000 people in 3 weeks. Definitely pre-television, definitely pre-internet. Just newspaper and radio probably were the mediums to get the word out.
Yeah, but everyone read the newspaper.
True.
There was definitely a bigger trust level for officials like your health officer.
That's what I was going to say. I was going to say something about they definitely had some public trust, and faith in that they were doing the right thing.
Which is remarkable because, again, the guy had been on the job less than 24 hours. He didn't have a long track record.
Yeah.
But he was a doctor, and South Bend was a smaller city at that point. There weren't a ton of doctors. There were a lot, but you tended to trust the doctors, and there was not these differing sources of information that we have now.
True. Good point. Good point.
They went out, they got their shots, and they put this epidemic to bed in a month.
January 1926, South Bend. And you mentioned, the smallpox, it seems like a lot longer than 100 years ago. 100 years does seem like a lot of time, but the neighborhood that we're sitting in now, like Sunnymead, I mean, this was a neighborhood in 1926. I mean, these homes are 100 years old. And so I always try to put things like that into perspective of the ages, This home's 1952, but the rest of the neighborhood is the 20s.
Yeah.
I mean, neighborhoods are being built. The Grand Trunk was getting rerouted through the neighborhood at the same time, and then we have smallpox. It's nuts. All right, 2 more. Prohibition, the Klan, and a moist New Year.
There's a lot going on in this story.
Yeah. We could have probably done a whole episode on just this. This is a great quote. You wrote, South Bend had a complicated relationship with sobriety, especially when it was forced upon them. And by 1926 New Year's, it was forced upon them. Let's just talk briefly about the varied laws on alcohol at the time.
Yeah, so this is an important distinction. When prohibition comes into play, it becomes illegal to manufacture or sell alcohol.
Right.
All right.
Illegal to possess, right?
Not to possess, not even to drink it. And so prohibition also came about with some notice. So people who knew that they wanted to continue to drink were able to stock up.
Right.
And they did. I mean, they stocked up like you wouldn't believe.
I'm sure.
In the years before official prohibition. Well, by 1926, we've been under this for years now.
Yeah.
Longer than anyone, I think, probably thought it would last.
Yeah.
And so this is becoming a bigger problem for the people of South Bend for a few reasons. Number one, the people who had stocked up are starting to run out if they haven't run out already. So that's problem number one. Problem number two is that the state of Indiana has passed extra prohibition laws, bigger and stricter than exist in the rest of the nation.
Okay.
So in Indiana, it is no longer legal to possess. If you can be arrested for possession,
got it.
You can be arrested for drinking it. There's no medical exemption. So previously, doctors could prescribe you whiskey or something
for the old toothache.
And they're trying to get rid of religious exemptions, which is a big deal in South Bend because it's such a Catholic community. And so when you think about South Bend in 1926, especially compared to the rest of the state, it is definitely more Catholic.
Yeah.
It is definitely more European. You know, we've got distinct Polish neighborhoods, Hungarian neighborhoods. And for these neighborhoods and these communities, wine is not just something that they enjoy and they think is good. Like, it is a part of their culture.
It's their everything. Yeah,
it's a part of their community. And so for them to have to get rid of that is proving to be a problem in South Bend. And so even though prohibition has been in effect in a while and theoretically people's stashes are gone and the laws are stricter, the newspaper describes it as a pretty moist New Year because people are still finding ways to drink.
Pretty moist New Year.
Yeah.
But then you wrote that their supposed sobriety on December 31st, 2025 was a group effort. What does that mean?
So to their credit, the people who shouted the loudest for prohibition recognized that they needed to offer people an alternative.
Yeah.
So it wasn't just like, all right, no more drinking for anyone. And on New Year's Eve, they wanted no one to drink, but they went out of their way to provide alternative entertainment options. And so there were parties in South Bend at churches, at social clubs, at clubs, at restaurants that went until 5 a.m.
I read that. I was like, dang, they're doing it up back in the 20s.
They're partying to 5 a.m. without any alcohol.
Yeah.
How in the world they pull that off, I don't know. But it happened. And so everyone who was on the prohibition side, the temperance side, recognized that if they were going to force this upon their fellow man, they needed to at least offer an alternative.
Yeah.
So they tried. They really tried. Not everyone took them up on that alternative.
And what were some clues that not everybody took up on that alternative?
So what the newspaper writes about a few people who were outright arrested.
Yeah.
But they also said that they only arrested people who brawled. So if they saw...
they were causing a scene.
Yeah, if they saw you sneaking a drink, they'd probably give you a tisk-tisk and tell you to do that in secret next time. But if you were causing trouble, you would get arrested.
Yeah.
That was a compromise, I guess. But the other thing the newspaper writes about is these young people, these young people at these parties who kept going back and forth from the house to their car. And the article takes extra care to notice that many of them were not wearing jackets.
Oh, yeah. They had to add a layer of protection.
And it said, what reason would you have to be walking around outside without a jacket if you were not going to sneak a drink from the car?
Yep.
Which gives me a whole layer of suspicion of every middle school boy I
was
see
just thinking,
all winter long. What are you doing over
Not wearing
there?
their coats.
You got shorts on.
Yep. That's funny. When you put that in there, you mentioned, I was laughing because yes, they're not wearing coats anymore.
No. But that was what they saw. And as part of the laws, the strict laws in Indiana, they promised a $25 bonus for every conviction they could get.
Really?
And that's a ton of money in 1926.
That's a lot of money then, yeah.
And so not only are these laws super strict, but now every prosecutor in every county in the state can make themselves a lot of money if they get stricter on it.
That is wild.
And so the newspaper had said that New Year's Eve 1925 into 26 was supposed to be the driest one because it was the first New Year when these strict laws were in effect.
Got it.
Obviously, people's personal stashes had been
dwindled, yeah.
And again, it wasn't as dry as they thought. People were rebellious.
Right, of course.
And they found a way.
You also tie this moment to the political power of the Ku Klux Klan.
Yes.
Man, how were Prohibition and the Klan connected locally?
The Ku Klux Klan by 1925 had infiltrated the state government at virtually every branch. And they were wildly ineffective once they were in power.
Yeah.
This super strict prohibition law that they passed is the only law that they pass. And there were a lot of reasons that they were anti-alcohol, but one of those reasons was it could stick it to the Catholics.
Yep. They did not like Catholics.
They did not like Catholics. And to be a Klansman in 1926 was to be very anti-Catholic.
Yep.
Because there weren't a lot of African Americans in the state. It was real hard to drum up a scare around African Americans in most of the state. There were counties that had 1 or 2 people.
Right.
And some that had 0. So you weren't going to get members that way. So you said, the Catholics are the problem, or these new European immigrants are the problem.
Right.
Whatever it was, you could tie it to them and their love for drink. Therefore, a good Klansman is against alcohol, is very much on the side of prohibition. Well, by 1926, the Klan dissolves. They fall apart. It's ugly. It's nasty. It's horrible. This law stays on the books into the 30s.
Yeah.
So there is a lasting legacy in Indiana politics that far outlasts them.
That is nuts. Yeah, when you go back and research the Klan in Indiana in the 20s, I mean, it's something else. That Todd Tucker, I interviewed him. He wrote the ND versus the Klan, and it's just there's several other books similar to that, but it's wild.
It's a nightmare.
It's nuts.
They arrived in 1920.
Uh-huh.
By 1925, they had the state under their thumb. This was not something that they'd been building for decades.
Yep.
They showed up and took over, and people were that hungry to find someone they could vilify.
Yep. Oh. All right, the last article. In 1926, South Bend was sorry in blue. Anytime, me included, anytime folks hear the word L-Bell, we probably just think of the golf course on the west side of town. The L-Bell family was huge. They were big time, weren't they?
They're one of the most important families in the early history of South Bend, absolutely.
Unreal. Generations of them.
Generations.
Man, talk to us a little bit about them.
So the Elbel family were very early to South Bend, 1840s, I think. And they were German immigrants who were musicians. They were musicians. And when they showed up, there weren't a lot of other competent musicians. I mean, there weren't a ton of people here.
Right. It was early.
They had a big family who could all play music, which meant they had a band already. No one else had a band. So they start the first band. They start the first choir in town. They teach music lessons. They open a music store. And if you look back at old newspapers and there's a picnic at someone's house or some park or some social gathering, it's the Elbel band.
Yeah, okay.
That's playing it. And so I don't think I can overstate enough how important that is. There's no other entertainment options. There's no record players. There's no radio in the 1800s.
True.
There's no TV.
True.
If you want to hear music, you're going to hear it live, which means you're going to go to church and hear whatever they're doing at church, or you're going to hear these guys, and that's it for decades. So Timothy Howard writes of the Elbel family in his History of St. Joseph County that they were to South Bend's music and culture scene what the Studebakers and the Olivers were to its industrial scene.
Wow. Yeah, I mean, I guarantee you, like I said, that the majority of people think Elbel just the golf course, you know? And here I am, a local historian who I knew it was a family of musicians, but not to that depth, you know? And so that's just amazing. And you wrote, Louis Elbel composed Michigan's fight song, The Victor.
Michigan's fight song, The Victor, composed by a proud South Bender.
That's wild. And then cousins Bob and Don Elbel wrote an absolute banger.
An absolute banger.
Sorry in Blue, huh?
Sorry in Blue came out in 1926, early 1926, by cousins Bob and Don Elbel.
Yep.
It is a lovesick waltz.
Okay.
Would be how I would describe it. I think a lot of contemporary listeners would be tempted to call this classical music just because it has violins and stuff. This is not classical music. Okay. This is at best like cheap pop classical, bubblegum classical.
Yeah.
It's early pop music. And it's about a guy singing a song about how heartbroken he is. He's been left sorry and blue.
Yeah.
Well, this song becomes really popular. The way that it becomes really popular is interesting in 1926. Okay. So the radio exists. It is not necessarily entirely ubiquitous yet. The way that music gets traded is in music stores. Okay. Where you go and you buy sheet music. Yeah. And then you come home and you play it on your piano or you play it on your fiddle or you play it with your little group. And by 1926, South Bend had 25, 30 small bands that were playing venues everywhere. Because again, if you wanted to have music at your restaurant, you weren't piping it through your Spotify. You had to hire someone.
No Bluetooth.
And all of these guys wanted to make sure they were the hippest. Yeah. Which meant they're in the music store every week picking up the newest sheet music so they can take it back and play it. And Sorry in Blue was one of those songs in 1926, bigger than South Bend. Yeah. That kind of got some national, again, airplay is not the word because there's no radio, but was played in clubs, restaurants. Every band was covering this song.
That's nuts. And it just reminds me when I was a kid, we'd wait outside Orbit Music at midnight on Monday to get the new tape, the new CD, and that's what they were doing, waiting for new sheet music.
That's exactly what they were doing.
That's nuts. And in 1926, music wasn't something that you just kind of sat and listened to. I mean, you almost participated in it. Oh, you know, like you're dancing and all that. So it wasn't just like me and you sitting down with our earbuds in, bobbing our heads. Like it was a social thing, and it was bigger than just that.
Yeah, you know? This was gosh, I'm gonna give away my age now, but Casey and JoJo All My Life would have been the song when I was at prom age. Yep. This was that song for a whole generation of people.
It's amazing, man. That's cool. That's cool. Do you think people in 1926 complained that music just isn't what it used to be?
I think some of them probably did.
I'm sure they did.
When you listen to this song, and I encourage people to listen to it, it is a woefully simple song. Yeah. It is not complicated. It doesn't take risks. It doesn't take chances. I looked at the ukulele chart for it when I saw it, and I grabbed a ukulele and I played it. And I don't play the ukulele, but it is not a complicated song. Yeah. It's got some cute lyrics. It's got a fun beat. It's very slow danceable. Yeah. That's what it was.
Exactly.
I mean, this is not Mozart at the peak of his powers or anything like that. So I'm sure people who appreciated more sophisticated music kind of snubbed their noses at this the way every generation in history has snubbed their noses at the next generation's music.
Right. It's just neat, though, to know that, in mid-20s, South Bend, man, we had the L-Bells.
If you had a heartache, I had them too. You may blame me, dear, but I don't blame you. I love you still, I always will, though you made me sorry and blue.
Yeah, we were putting out music. We were putting out books. We were covering the world.
Yeah,
just
for sure.
not with woolen goods anymore.
No. All the whole sheep stocks were dead. All right, we'll wrap it up just with a few overarching kind of just questions here. On the surface, some of these articles seem different. I mean, smallpox, Babe Ruth, tariffs. Man, but are there any common threads running through them?
I think there's just a very exciting time.
Yeah.
And exciting doesn't always mean good. It just meant a lot of stuff was happening all at the same time.
Yep.
And you look at the ground that we've covered today, like in 1 year, they're going from a smallpox epidemic to a hit song to a novelist to a Babe Ruth sighting.
Yeah.
And we haven't mentioned Newt Rockne and Notre Dame at all as a part of this. It gets wilder. There's these stories, more stories than you would think about like old men on horseback getting into collisions with cars because there's like this generational
like a
mix-up happening. Yeah.
Like a transition time.
Yep. And all these cars are on the road, but there's almost no laws to cover them. There's no stoplights. People are just doing whatever they want. People are getting run over all the time.
Yep.
Cars are hitting sleighs. Cars are hitting horses because it's two generations. It's two time periods colliding all at once. It's a fascinating time.
Yeah.
It was worth 6 articles at least.
Heck yeah. And it's worth the whole podcast episode here.
Definitely.
Awesome. Hey, Aaron, thank you so much for joining us, and thank you for spending the time researching, diving deep, and sharing these stories.
Hey, my pleasure.
Thank you once again for listening to another episode of Round the Bend Now and Then. An extra special thanks to Aaron Helman for joining and sharing these stories from 1926 South Bend. But more importantly, thank you for all that you do to preserve and share our local history. Thank you again for listening, and thank you for caring about stories that make this place home.